You should be all set.
Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the November 9th, 2022 Waste Flow Committee meeting. We've not met for quite some time. We're meeting today to discuss the new law, the Extended Producer Responsibility Program that was enacted into law this year. I've like to call the meeting to order. Maybe I did that already. Sorry, that prior meeting kind of was long. Approval of agenda. What I'd like to do is add to the agenda that we were sent that Mike and I are meeting with the DEP, representatives of the DEP, December 2nd of next month as representatives, owners of a processing facility, just to discuss the law in general, how we might help, the reporting requirements, discuss those with the folks, and other nuances of the law. So I'd ask to add that to the agenda, and I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I'd move we approve the agenda.
As before, I'll go down to a voice vote. Bob,
Yes.
Dana,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
Sophie,
I'm not on this committee. I'm just
Not
lurking
you.
in the background.
okay. I don't see Melissa,
Right.
and I vote in favor of the agenda. So that's 4 of us in favor. Motion passes. But I'd like to do item 3, discuss DEP 38 MRS and 2146 stewardship programs, MRC position and representation in series of stakeholder meetings addressing rulemaking starting in December of 2022. I read through the law yesterday and today, then I discovered on the DEP website a really good 4 or 5 page extended producer responsibility program for packaging that I may have learned more from reading that than I did the law. The Maine legislature recently passed a stewardship program for packaging. Basically, the producers of products will pay into a fund based on the amount and the recyclability of packaging associated with their products. They're going to be soliciting proposals to hire a stewardship company to monitor, put together the plan, work with them. How knowledgeable are the rest of you on this new law? May I ask?
Just what I read yesterday and today, Tony.
Yeah, thank you. Same here. I've followed it somewhat in the press, but not as in depth. There's a lot here to go through, and we're not going to get through everything in an hour. Mike?
So Tony, I would like to, I remember when they were, I'd like to just give a little history if you don't mind, and then
Sure.
talk a little bit about, what my thoughts were in the time that we were spent in Augusta. When they were talking about this law and surveys were being done, I spent some time with it, but then when the needs changed with the facility, that's really been the focus. And it was kind of burner for now, when the law was done. But they have been asking us, questions about things and everything else. So there's some loopholes that I see that I think is important, why we should get involved, and we should get involved for our members. And I'll go over it very high level. And then as time goes on, we can figure out the things we want to focus on. I really believe if we can get past this hurdle too, on the plant and what's happening with the plant and the reopening of the plant, that maybe the MRC should actually answer the proposal for helping managing the. I just think we're so close to the waste. We have so much experience with the waste that, and if we end up with a staff, it's something that we can take on and look at for our members. So some of the concerns I have with my involvement and what I've seen is the pulp. How are we going to do the pulp? They're talking a lot about cardboard and packaging. Well, remember, this plant cherry picks out it's designed to operate where it cherry picks the clean cardboard, it takes out the clean cardboard, it bales that cardboard, which I know will be part of the process. But what about all the other fiber? We're going way over and beyond. 30% of what this plant does is fiber, which becomes a pulp. So how is that going to be measured? Is there going to be an average moisture content that we're going to take out of several loads, just like they do with cardboard? They take a moisture content out of it. And is that going to be part of it? The packaging also includes, I believe, film and wrap and those type of things. Is our briquettes going to be included in this? 8% of what the briquettes, 8% of what this plant does is briquettes. So let's round that number up to 40% between pulp and briquettes. Is this something that's going to be part of the program? We can be a big help in the monitoring of this, because remember, everything that comes into the facility crosses a scale, and everything that goes out crosses a scale. And we have, 102,000 tons of waste. So we're going to be a big part of helping out to report on this. And then also the plant on top of that, that's just the MRC waste. Remember, they hold their own recycling contracts, and I believe they have 12 recycling contracts that I'm sure will get assigned again to the plant when it reopens. And then everybody right now that's continuing recycling is paying like $170 tip fee, and it's getting shipped down to Lewiston. So I'm sure there's going to be even a larger percentage of communities that still do the recycling and sorting, that are going to want to bring it to the plant. So when we sit down with the DEP and talk about it, I think one of the big focus should be on the pulp and the briquette. The other thing with visiting our members is it costs so much to recycle that a lot of members that have these transfer stations and everything didn't have the footprint to. One of the big problems when I started was they didn't have the footprint to keep a full load of cardboard, or they didn't have the footprint to keep a full load of paper, and vendors were refusing to come get it. And because it was partial loads, they couldn't, not everybody was due at the same time, and they couldn't make up loads. So, if somebody is participating, but they can't get a broker or somebody to take it, what position does that put them in? What are they going to do about that? Where, one of the things I'm hoping that one of the goals when we get this plan up and going, which I've talked to Revere about, is when we get our offtake agreements, we should be able to extend those offtake agreements to our members that do that, that do bale their own cardboard and do that type of thing, so they won't have that problem. And then the other big thing that I want to know how we're going to do, because our waste flow communities will lose out on it, is, so if this is like the electronics, they are going to take a pool of funds from the vendors for the amount of merchandise that's sent and sold here. And then out of that pool of fund, they are going to look at the recycling rates from our communities and give some kind of reimbursement to those communities. But our waste flow communities, Bangor and Brewer especially, and this is what I used to do prior to coming here, is they have contracts with Cascade. And they are baling their cardboard directly, and then trucks are coming to pick that up. They're called Moffats. It's the truck that drives around with the forklift on the back and taking it. So that's coming from Dollarama. That's coming from Lowe's. That's coming from all these big commercials. The Target's is one of them. None of that's touching a processing center or a transfer. So the way I believe it's set up now is the vendor is going to be paying into a pool from that, but those funds are never really going to get designated to the ones with waste flow control because it's never going to cross a scale at a processing facility like ours or a recycling center. So I'm curious, is there going to be a formula for that? Is there going to be a percentage for that? So these are many of the questions that I have with working with Tony as this thing gets closer. I'm sure there's a lot more, but that's kind of what I've been focused on when we first started. I want you to know, and it's been behind the scenes too, MRC has been very involved with helping these folks out. When they want to do a survey for the amount of recycling people did, we allowed that to we actually distributed that to them to all our members. We distributed the link and gave that to all our members. They've asked us a lot of questions on the rulemaking and on that type of thing. So we've been able to put a little input in on that. So we're not just coming to the party for the first time. We've been talking to them right along, and Karen Canuti actually reached out to me and said, as we got closer, invited me to sit down, and Tony, of course, the chair, and invited me to sit down with them. And you know, they don't want to talk about, they want to talk about like the logistics issues. There's so many of our members out there that have their own transfer stations that just that are just they can't get their loads picked up. So hopefully with the plant and with some wordsmithing, we can get this all worked out. So it does benefit our members, but it's just, my fear is right now there's gonna be this big pool of money that they end up with, and they're gonna keep investing it into the infrastructure, in education and that type of thing, just because there was no good reporting or no way of tracking what the recycles are and what the rebates should look like. Our first suggestion was, when they asked me, is the nice thing about the way that we do business is we have a total volume coming in of waste, and then we have a total volume of residual or recyclable going out. So if Carmel is 2,000 ton of waste coming in, and that represents 5% of our 102,000 tons, then their reimbursement is 5% of that total recycling that went out. And that's how I kind of envision this happening. Where that's going to get a little, I haven't thought about or figured out yet, where that's going to get a little bit confusing is if people that aren't a member just bring recycling in outside of their waste, or even if they are a member and just bring recycling outside of their waste, like Orno. So in a nutshell, that's what I'm kind of envisioning. I know you all read it, and I don't know where you stand on it, but those are the things that I think are MRC's focus right now. I'm not necessarily dedicated to them, but from what little knowledge I have and been involved, that's kind of where my head's at.
Thanks, Mike. It's reading through this literature. The record keeping is going to be a challenge related to not ours, not specifically ours, but overall, company that's got to set everything up. They're going to hire a company to set basically the program up.
See, and I think that's kind of a mistake, because I'm sorry, Bob, my understanding is we all have to do an annual report. Like Tony, you have to do an annual report for your transfer station, right?
We don't have a transfer station. We just have a recycling center.
But do you have to do an annual report for it?
No.
Oh, okay.
We used, state planning office used to require that we do one. That went away. Then it was the report form was sent to me by the DEP, and maybe it's because of COVID. I haven't seen one for a couple of years.
I think it would be a lot easier if anybody with a transfer station or processing center had to do an annual report.
Yeah. What we use, there's the 5 ADD towns plus other towns use the EMR transfer station in Southwest Harbor, and they do a report. But for the recycling reports and MSW reports, they used to come through DEP to us, the blank, and they were just standardized forms. Bob?
Yeah, I agree with you, Tony, that this is an administrative nightmare and imposes workloads and obligations on municipalities that many of which aren't even prepared to cope with the information or making the information available. But I also agree with Mike that this is an opportunity for MRC maybe to put in a bid as a steward that helps to identify producers and implement the program and have a good idea of what the funds are that come in and where they go. I also think that Eco Maine, maybe one of the reasons they've approached us is because they're looking at this law and realizing it has implications for them. And one of the reasons they may have reached out to us is that they'd like to work with us to find ways better to implement this thing. When I read through it, I was really upset because I think they're asking for information that's going to be almost impossible to obtain.
Mhm.
And it doesn't, there are huge exemptions. Food is a huge exemption in this thing. And I'm sure you've all gone into Hannaford's and bought these big plastic bins of salad. It shouldn't be packed that way. There are better options, but this does nothing to address that issue. Maybe it does encourage people to use
Better.
more recycled or recyclable materials in what they're using in their packaging, but it's kind of an indirect way of doing it. And what it may do is simply turn people off to put their products in Maine. And it may backfire on us. I have no idea how much of an imposition this is going to place on producers outside of Maine, even inside of Maine, and how it's going to affect their bottom line. But I do support the spirit of the law. I think it's well-intentioned. I'm just not sure it's the way that we ought to be doing this. And I think Mike's right. We have an opportunity to put ourselves in a position of influencing how this thing is enforced. And that's going to be the big problem. How do you enforce this?
Yeah, and I think it's going to change a lot over time. And it's like recycling. I think they're going to have producers that will proactively try to address the criteria in the law. And then the way I read it, then they're going to start hitting them in the pocketbook to force them, they being the producers, to conform with the law.
So Mike, how do you, can we back up to how this all is supposed to work? And the core of it is the producer. So as Bob said, how do you identify them? How do you, so is the producer Home Depot? Because they're selling the packaging, or is it the manufacturers are the producers?
My understanding, this is my understanding, it's the manufacturer. And they have different levels. So like Bob, there is some protection for a small business.
Yeah.
They do have different levels of producers or manufacturers for volumes. But my understanding is it's the manufacturer, because one fear was, like Bob said, is they won't either send their products to Maine, or they're just going to up the, every supply chain. The same light bulb at Home Depot in Maine isn't the same price in Massachusetts. So you're just going to see probably a price increase to the distributor, which the distributor will pass it on to the consumer. What I'm assuming.
And that's my whole point. Let's just take Home Depot as an example. So the manufacturer of the light bulb is the producer, right? Not Home Depot. So the light bulb, GE, is the producer. And they're going to go through Home Depot as an example, and everything that's in a box that's packaged, they're going to identify the manufacturer of all those products and trace that back to where the manufacturer is, and say, if you're sending that to Maine, here's your fee, etc.
Yeah, because as I read it, there's going to be like a UPC or a barcode on the packaging.
So everything in Home Depot is in a box. And they're going to say, every one of those manufacturers, they're going to trace all them down and send them a letter and say, you got to pay this fee now. Am I dumbing this down a little bit, or?
And that fee is to go into, anything sold in Maine will pay a like, we'll call it a tax. I know that's a problem.
It's a tax.
And that will go into a general fund. Electronics have been doing this for a long time. That will go into a general fund, and then we'll look at the volumes from this. Then they will take the volumes from the
Towns.
recycled rates across Maine and distribute portions of that general fund back to the people that recycle based on their volume.
Yeah. But I mean, going back to the Home Depot example, like how do you, where does this stewardship start? Because you got
The
Home
DEP
Depot, and then you got Target, and then you got Walmart, and then you got, on and on and on and on and on. And then when you think you had them all, how do you possibly be equitable with this? Like, how do you find all those manufacturers? And that is such every day they're buying from different people. And whose
Yep. responsibility
responsibility is it? Is it like Home Depot to, I'm using them example because I go there more than anywhere. They're in Tractor Supply, and I'm thinking to myself, who's going to go in that store and scan all those UPCs to find the manufacturers? Is it the steward, the company that's going to be responsible for the
Yeah.
stewardship?
I didn't see that identified in what I read. That may be part of the, Mike, is that part of the rule making over the next year?
Yeah, I don't know the answer.
These
to that.
rebates, sorry, Mike, I'm sorry.
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Dana, did you know the answer to that?
No, I had a question when you.
Oh.
Did,
Okay, let's try to answer Kevin's and then, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know how it's being tracked on that level. I know that so for the electronics, I know that Panasonic has to submit a report for everything that they distributed to Maine, not necessarily where, just total volume, not necessarily at what location, just total volume, because that electronics fund ended up with so much surplus because they could just never track it. So on given, and I know it's set up similar to that. So I don't believe it's at the actual. I don't know, Kevin. I don't know if people have to be licensed to sell it. They have to be registered to sell stuff in the state, but I think it's going to tie into something like that. I don't think it's going to tie into the actual store.
And the
then
payments,
the
they've
other
allowed
piece
themselves a
is,
lot of time. Payments don't start until 2027.
I mean, the more boxes are coming in from Amazon than anywhere else, right? They're
Right.
going into the municipal waste stream. So how does that tie into it?
And bags, boxes and bags from Amazon.
Yeah. So how is that equitable? I'll be honest. I saw this coming down the pipeline, sitting on the LPC, the Legislative Policy Committee for MMA, and I agree that the intent, like a lot of things, like the intent of the senior tax stabilization law was great, but that's where it ended. But the intent of this is great, but the administration piece, I mean, I did the same thing, Tony. I read through the DEP website was the best piece because it's a question and answer, and it helps kind of summarize everything for dummies like me. But I'm telling you, the administration piece, it just seems unfathomable. Like, how do you even, I'm talking about this, not the reporting on the end. We can certainly help with that. That's quantifiable, like what part of the municipal waste stream is being recycled and all that. But the starting point, where do you start with all the packaging that comes through the state?
Way back, DEP is going to solicit bids for companies, the steward companies that want to do this. And they're the ones, based on what I read, are going to put all this in the process together.
They're going to figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah.
And presumably, some are already doing this in states where a law like this is already in force. They've developed a database and God knows what they do with it.
Dana, did you have a question?
as our other states around us, we're such a small cog in the big wheel here. We're not going to be able to get manufacturers to do something special for Maine if the other states aren't doing a very similar thing, are we?
My understanding, and this is Maine's taking the lead on this one. My understanding, this is we're the ones that are starting this.
Well, there's Oregon as well, I think I read. Passed a law last year as well, this year. But that's what I read. They're going to solicit bids for companies like Bob, you mentioned early on, Mike did with Well, I call it coastal. It's easier.
So what is
I-
it the DEP, Mike, what is it the DEP wants from us?
DEP wants to know exactly what we're talking about. What do we see the struggles being? And what is there, what are going to be some of the logistic issues with, and they mentioned like transportation and recording and reporting. So they want us to just give our experience, stuff like that, and what we foresee might be some hurdles. But then, so that's as like coming in as having a processing center and helping them consult. But then on wearing the MRC's hat as owning a processing center now, I don't see, unless I've missed it, you guys, how are they gonna reckon? There's no sense of us helping the DEP, and I don't mean that, but they need to recognize pulp. If film's part of this, they need to recognize the briquettes. And the briquettes might be a tough one, because when I talk about film, I'm talking about the shrink wrap on the outside of a package, that small cellophane. But then a trash bag's made out of film, and all the trash bags are in the briquettes. But that's what we're recycling. So my main concerns wearing the hat of the MRC and being an owner of the facility is, what is your formula for pulp? Are you going to recognize pulp, and are you going to recognize, and do you have a moisture? How are you going to do the moisture piece? And are they doing a moisture piece on the cardboard? Because they're just going to get robbed if they haven't put anything in for moisture on the cardboard yet. So that's that one concern. And then MRC going in as a consultant saying, well, this is how we plan on reporting it. This is how we plan on keeping track of it. I would highly recommend, I'd love to be involved in the stewardship, but it would be so much easier. The only people that are going to be recycling is municipalities. And I think it'd be so much easier just that every municipality had to fill out a recycling. I mean, I fill out an annual report now that's scared to death of me for waste. It takes me about 2 hours. It's for 115 communities of waste. I just think it'd be so much easier. There's only so many buckets for recycling for each to submit a report, and then a distribution check goes out at quarterly or at the end of the year.
Going back to that report, when I was doing them before I stopped receiving the forms, the people in DEP were almost shocked that they got one.
Bob, I'm sorry. This law, my understanding, isn't outside of municipalities. So I've never heard of a recycling center that takes other items. I know that like a bottle redemption center, they crush cardboard and do cardboard boxes, but there's only so many municipalities in Maine. So I find that much easier. Bob, I'm sorry. Did you have something?
No, not at all. I want to make 2 points. The first is that a lot of municipalities don't even have scales. And so they're going to guesstimate volumes. And that's what it is. It's a pure guess. It's not going to be a very accurate measure. The second point, though, is I think we need to be concerned about the extent to which this potentially interferes with the MRC business strategy. A lot of our revenue stream comes from recyclable materials in a market that is variable. It's all over the place. So I think one of the comments we're, obliged to put in front of the DEP is that they, in a sense, could potentially interfere with our business model and make life very difficult for us because it's going to affect the quality over time. It's going to affect the quality and content of the waste stream that we process. And that may be a good thing or a bad thing, but I think we need to be wary here and keep our eyes open about the potential impacts this could have on us.
And so, go ahead, Mike.
So, Bob, I just want to make sure I understand your question, because I don't know so one is nobody's going to record any weights or pay anything out off of a municipality scale. It's always going to be on the scale going. There's always going to be a scale at the end where the recycle's going, because that's how they record it. So there's always going to be a weight ticket from your cascade, your plastics, and all that type of thing. And say it's coming to us for briquettes or something, there's always going to be a scale ticket from the buyer. So I'm not concerned with the scale ticket. But I want to make sure this is not going to make people keep recyclable because it probably costs them more for the infrastructure. Actually, I almost think we're going to get more because it makes life so much easier. Now we're going to give this group or we're going to give them a weight. This is how much cardboard we did over a year. And this is the different percentages you need to apply it to these 115 communities. And they're going to get a check. This is the way I look at it. Now, it's made, they don't even have to, they didn't have to do anything. And it might make it so we get more waste at the end of the day because they're not putting in transfer stations, or they're realizing, you know, I might get more selling to the recycle center, but I'm also getting this rebate check for, like, say you still sort cardboard and sell it. You're going to get a rebate check from them. And hopefully, if this all works out, you're also going to get another rebate check for your 10% of the pulp we sold, you know, on that end, or the 2% you're entitled to of the briquettes that we sold. That money's not coming out of our pocket. That money's just coming out of this general fund for a number we submitted. So I kind of look at it as a positive that municipalities are going to get a check or a rebate for something that they didn't even do.
Mm. What I found interesting is they pointed out that there's going to be a rate for good recyclables and a rate for not so good recyclables
Yeah, I don't know how.
in the law. I mean, that's pretty hokey.
So, and that's another good point, is what one of our members, small transfer stations, they're probably going to go over that with a fine tooth comb for contamination.
Yeah.
Big volume user like us, because we're part of the recipe, we're consistent, we ship so many loads a week, there's a lot more leeway for contamination. Remember the guy that we were dealing with, Dominic, how he said he didn't have to turn the pulper on because, and we told him that paper is going to be full of food and so nasty that you're going to sell as mixed paper. He says, I sell 2,000 tons of mixed paper a month. They don't look at my they don't look at my quality, you know? So where the plant's going to probably have a little bit more flexibility on that too. But I could be totally wrong. I just look at it as where, even if you're still separating your own recyclables, you're still going to get a number from us that they accept pulp and briquettes, and it's something you're not even tracking or sorting or taking up a footprint at your recycling center or your transfer station. There's just really no, you got nothing into it.
This may be neither here nor there, but we went to single sort January 1st of January, but I'm keeping the cardboard out. And I'm told that when the cardboard goes up to Casella, that if the baler's working that day, we don't get charged a tip fee for it, which is now up to $165. And but I've also been told our local person is mixing the cardboard in with other towns and the single sort stuff. It's one thing I want to do is take a trip to Casella, but that's hopefully I won't have to. We'll be back online in a few months, but it's a strange, it's quite a business. What I'm saying is who to trust. And reading that law, it sounded like, what is the first term for a steward is 5 years, then they can re-up it. But if that steward goes out of business, then the monies that are left in the pool get turned over to the solid waste fund. Is that what you understand, Mike? And the way they described it, sounds like there's going to be a big pool of money there. Oh, you're on mute.
Yes, I just think the money is going to be greater than the distribution, unless we have very good tracking.
Yes, the record track.
Go the other way, if they don't think of stuff of removing moisture content from these numbers, anything going, so if they go off scale tickets, so anything going to like Cascade or anything like that, they have a formula where they remove a moisture content. So if those are the numbers being accepted, that's great. But anything going across the the scale at the Hamden facility, there's no formula for moisture content.
Okay,
Don't they
and the
have a
concern,
lab, Mike? Don't they have a
What?
lab to measure moisture content? We used to do that
Oh,
with
yeah.
our seed.
Well, there's a probe. I mean,
Yeah.
stick a probe in it and it tells you there's 10% moisture or 30%. You subtract that from the total weight. So yeah, I mean, there's very easy ways around.
and that's one thing we'll discuss with DEP in December when we're there, you and I.
Yeah,
Or how far into the weeds, I guess.
I just want to go in educated and make sure we all know what we're speaking of, I guess.
Karen had sent me an email and she didn't put a time schedule on it, but she was hoping to see from us basically an overview of the new law, our thoughts on how it'll impact our members, and how we can engage in the developing the implementation regs. I think we need, I'm not prepared to address her 3 questions. And I think we need another meeting, not that we don't have time, it's only 5 after 4. But does anyone have any questions to raise or base experience? An overview of the new law is going to be confusing. Logistics, record keeping, who's going to do what.
Well, and nobody's done it before, Tony.
Yeah.
We're leading the parade on this, so.
And
I question the ability of DEP even to implement this thing. I mean, they're understaffed.
Yeah.
How the heck are they going to do this?
And that's why I think that they're going to delegate that to the stewards. And some of the information they asked for of the stewards in the bids, it's pretty fine. It's basically the program. And I expected to come out of reading the law, knowing more about the nuts and bolts of how the program's going to work, but that's up to the steward to put it together. And I think it's only a 5-year contract first time around. It might be 10, but on one if 5 years is going to be enough, but that's what the DEP has decided on. A government-run program doesn't always work well. And I'm hoping that the stewards, and maybe not, Mike, maybe I'm way off base, are as well vetted. I'd like to be involved, and maybe I'm way off base in the proposal phase. Dana?
Tony, I think, all the money that the manufacturers are going to have to put into this and to add different kinds of packaging or to pay back what Mike was talking about, that's all going to consult as a consumer. You and I are going to pay more for everything we buy to pay up for this. And that's just, I don't know. It's going to be a mess. They're not going to do something special for Maine that they don't do for Massachusetts and New Hampshire and New York and all that. And they're just going to, if they do, they're going to up our price on everything we buy. So it's actually coming out of the individual homeowner where this money is going to come from, I think.
This is the whole point. I mean, it's a tax.
I
At
agree.
the end of the day, the tax is,
Yeah.
it's going to cost more because, okay, yeah, Mike, I mean, that's a simple thing to say, you don't have to do anything and you get a check, but I'm not in favor of taxing. That means all my residents are paying more for the product, and there's no way around that because anything gets passed on to the consumer. Minimum wage increases, taxes, it doesn't matter. It never comes off the bottom line of the producer. It comes out of the pockets of the consumer. And so it's a simple tax. Now, can we quantify that? Is it going to be so minimalized and spread out that we won't even notice the difference? I don't know, but we know it's there. And here we are, we're gonna get, it's all roundabout. Now, what is the cost of the program? It's obviously gonna cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to administer through this stewardship, if not more, maybe millions, I don't know. So now you're taxing the people and sucking the money out of that and then giving us what's left over. So again, I don't think that's what DEP is looking for, because this is already a codified, well, it passed legislation, but I mean, the intent of it is great, but it's all you're doing is adding another tax to everything that we pay. And again, are we going to be able to quantify that out of our pockets? I don't know, but I don't know. Doesn't and the intent when they were discussing it in the LPC one before it passed was, listen, the challenges of municipalities for paying for recycling was such a challenge. They wanted to try to incentivize both ends, incentivize the producer to produce better quality packaging, more recyclable packaging, or environmentally friendly packaging, and then help offset the cost for the municipalities. But at the end of the day, they created a tax, and here we are.
Yeah, and they're giving us back our own money. But couldn't hear you.
After taking a ton of money to administer it, right?
Yeah, right
So
off.
they
off
collect
the
our
top.
money,
Yeah,
collect our money, pay for the administration of it, and then give us what's left over.
and I can't see it anywhere, but did somewhere along the line, does it say it's going to save the taxpayer any money? What's wrong? Well, no, I'm not going down there. The law is the law, and that's what we have to conform to rather than complain about it, I guess. Bob?
Do we want to think about taking a different approach to achieving the goal the law wants us to achieve? I mean, the law is the law, it's in effect, but it can be amended, it can be repealed, it can be replaced. So yeah, there are some of us, I think, who feel that the problem is worth solving, but they're not solving it in the right way. And maybe one could argue that what the MRC is doing is a better way to solve the problem. Our whole process is supposed to improve recycling rates tremendously and take a lot of the stuff out of the stream that is being put into landfills now. Isn't that a better way of doing it? Municipalities are still paying for it. They pay a per ton fee to get rid of their stuff. But we're doing a more efficient job than perhaps installing a stewardship program through a bidding process that may or may not succeed. And they've allowed in the law that it might not. And the only
Right.
solution they have to that is, well, bid it again.
Yeah,
And how many iterations of that do you go through before you realize this isn't going to work? So the MRC offers an alternative here to the law that I think is probably more workable and a lot less expensive.
yeah. Are they telling us that in general, our recycling programs don't do what they had hoped they would do? And this is a quote test facility. Fiberite was hoping that this facility would be very successful so they could sell it in other areas. It wasn't, but it's going to be. And I think the investors are thinking maybe with that in the back of their minds. But I agree, Bob, this is our recycling rate in those reports I put together was like 11 and 12%.
Yep.
And our garbage was just under 2,000 tons. So it's Hamden works.
It
Give them a
does.
chance.
I could have swore that during the presentations for this bill, when they were presenting it, it had a lot to do with what was coming down the pipeline, which is these packages being shipped directly to the homes, as I mentioned earlier, in Amazon. And so our municipal waste flow is when we go to Target and I buy a toy for my son, it's in a package. Well, if I buy it on Amazon, it's already in that package, but then they add a package around it and ship it to me. So there's twice as much packaging, actually more, because the package around it they shipped it in has now things inside it, wrap, all these things that we're talking about. So I thought that was the intent of the bill was, there's so many more boxes coming into the waste stream, now, so much more packaging. And is this addressing that? I mean, are they paying, again, I keep going back to the origin of this thing is how do they identify who's paying those fees to fill the coffer to administrate this and then give the refunds, but it's
Same but different, Kevin. I use Office Depot because it's quick. And I've received, a calculator sized box of pens in a box that would hold 100 boxes of those pens. And I called them up, their sales rep we work with, and see, I'll check into that. That's the extent of it.
So what were we charged with doing? What was the Waste Flow Committee charged with doing today?
Okay, like I said, what Karen's looking for that she sent me. She's interested in hearing an overview of the new law,
Mhm.
our thoughts on how it will impact the MRC members, and the committee's proposal for how we can engage in the DEP's process for developing the implementation regulations.
So is anybody able to do an overview of the new law to give to Karen?
Yeah, I think
I can't take any more work on right now, but
I'm retired, kind of. But
I mean, that page on DEP's website that you found, Tony, and I found yesterday, that we can't do any better than that.
no, that's, and I'll scan it and send it off to you folks. I was happy when I found that because it was in English.
It gives the schedules, it gives what does the law do? I'm reading it now. What does the law not do? I'm a producer. What does this mean for me? And what exactly is a producer? I'm a municipality. What does this mean for me? I mean, the only thing we can do is kind of take the time to slim it down, but why would you? Because it's all good information. So I think that's what Karen's looking for. So I think a link to that page would be sufficient, in my opinion.
I haven't had a chance to look at it. Yesterday was election day, so
Yeah.
I was all day, but maybe we could all take a look at that and give a couple points what we could do for our membership and go from there. I think if we continue to talk about
Yeah.
what the law is, we're just going
Yeah,
down
that-
a really
yes.
bad rabbit hole.
Yeah.
So
And for how can we engage in the implementation regulations? I think we're starting when we visit with DEP December the 2nd, and then hopefully something will spin off from that. I'd like us, the MRC, to take the lead, some semblance of the lead.
I mean, Mike makes a good point, though. If we're getting, and yeah, I agree. I mean, we don't need to, again, I was just venting because it's an
Oh, yeah.
ugly situation, to be honest with you. And it's going to be very difficult to implement, but that's not what we're being asked to do here. So I agree with Mike that, yeah, I mean, the things that we're concerned with are the municipalities for all the legwork we're doing to get this plant open and all the time it's taken. Are the municipalities going to get adequate credit for the pulp and the briquettes and things like that? Is that form that's coming through going to give credit for that? So I think Mike's concerns are, if you could summarize that would be good. And I think we'll have the easiest reporting, and the EcoMaine, I'm sure, have the easiest reporting because it's easily quantifiable. It's trackable, and we can break it down by percentage based on tonnage and what goes through the plant. So I think we can easily report to the DEP on the municipality's behalf.
But the reporting, I agree with you, Kevin, but we haven't seen what is required in the reporting.
No, well, that doesn't exist yet, right? I mean,
Right, exactly.
I think that's what they're looking for us is what should that report look like, right, Mike?
Reporting, yeah.
Yeah.
And with the ADD, oh, sorry, Mike.
Yes, I do too. Like, I don't understand completely what they're recognizing. And meaning, when you buy a bottle of Tylenol, is it just the box board on the outside side? Are they counting plastics too? Like that's the part I don't understand. Like, is it the number twos, the number threes, is it all that? Or are we talking just fiber in wrap? So that's the part I got to wrap my head around.
They reference somewhere that the type of polymer used to make the plastic. Is that where the 1 through 7s come from?
Yeah, that's what I'm assuming, but I mean, so is it the box that the individual cases of Tylenol show up in? Is it the little Tylenol box
Oh, yeah.
on the shelf, or is it the pill bottle, or is it all the above?
Ah,
Well, that's what we gotta tell the DEPs. Hey, here's the
What's
list
what?
of things we don't know. And so help us understand.
and Melissa, to your question, I had hoped today we would do what we've done. Nobody knew this. I don't. I know now more about the law and the possible effects of it. One through the DEP handout and this discussion today. I think I could talk smarter tomorrow, knowing what we've gone over today. Kevin, you've had some great points.
So who is meeting with the DEP on December 2nd? It's you, Tony?
Mike and I, not just me. No, you don't want just me there.
And is that meeting's just is specifically about this?
It's just as more or less as a consultant type thing.
Mike,
That's all this is about. It's with a different team. It's what they call their
yeah,
it was on the email, but it's a different team of the DEP. I only recognize one person's name, and that's Karen Canuti. Other than that, it's a different part of it.
She lives in Carmel, you know.
Yeah.
is that John? Oh shoot, John Collins' partner. Do you know Kevin?
John Collins retired.
Yes.
Bob, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I just read quickly through the DEP's blurb on this, and you're right, Tony, it's very helpful to explain it, but my memory is coming back now. This whole initiative came from the Natural Resources Council of Maine. They basically wrote the law. And
Yes.
they don't like the MRC.
Yes.
They're not in our camp. So we need to be careful about how we tailor our criticism, our constructive criticism of this effort. There's a part of me that says the more recyclable waste we get, the more boxes Amazon wraps around a product it ships into the States, the better, because then we got more pulp to sell. But it's not that simple. And they do have a point about the packaging. So we're treading a very delicate thing here. I think positioning ourselves in terms of supporting it, and as maybe Mike is suggesting, becoming a steward might ingratiate ourselves to the end to people like National Resources Council of Maine. They might begin to appreciate more what we're able to do to help this process along.
Yeah,
I strongly feel they need our reporting, and that gives us a feather in our cap. They can't make these numbers work without knowing what our reporting is. It's just they have to know what we're bringing in and what we're putting out.
And presumably EcoMaine is going to be in the same position we're in.
But EcoMaine is 100% recycle, but it's going to be just on paper, and you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
We have the unique, if they get the pulp, that's going to be very unique. But this plant offers our members an all-in-one, and they're going to have no way of working with those members unless we report what the number of recycle is going out. Like Bangor, they're not the third largest city. They're not going to want to exclude them and put that dog in the fight, I wouldn't think, after they've signed a 10-year, $10 million contract and tell them that, well, we don't like the Hampton facility, so we're not gonna rely on their data. You're not getting anything. I just can't
Right.
imagine to bark up that tree.
Okay.
And the Hamden facility, if we have what, the 50% law that's been in effect for a number of years, long time for recycling. We're going to make it once that plant's online and operating properly. We're going to exceed it.
Mhm.
And I've complained about packaging. Some of that shrink wrap plastic, you almost, cut your fingers off trying to get into it.
Yep.
The hard plastic. So I'm all in favor of the spirit of the law, that's for sure. But the devil's in the details, and we need to help with the details if they're willing.
Maybe as somebody commenting on the law, a strategy we could suggest would be to identify violators that are clearly violators who are way over the top and make a lot of public noise about them and discourage people as an organization, like that stupid organization out in California did about lobsters. I don't want to borrow their platform, but if you're making a legitimate argument against somebody's practices, it can have an effect on how they behave. And this would give us a platform to do that, and suggest that maybe a not more effective, but an additional way, a complementary way of dealing with this packaging problem is to single people out and go after them.
So the folks that will really get hurt from this, and I don't know how many they are, is the folks like going to PERC that are saying, they feel good about what they're doing with their waste because they're sending it to PERC and they're making electricity and energy. There's no formula or no credit. I mean, they don't even get credit for actually making energy or electricity out of it. Now, I don't know how many of those people going to PERC have curbside recycling also, but I'm sure a lot of them don't. So that's gonna really maybe even help benefit this facility, because after a while, if those rebate checks are big enough and they feel like they're missing out on something, then that might change things too. But that's who this really hurts, is there's no reporting for them. There's no formula for them, which it'd be very hard to do a formula for something like that.
Hey, Mike, on this handout, this DEP publication, the end of this year, December 31st, is the deadline to initiate rulemaking with the Board of Environmental Protection. What's that mean? It says deadline to initiate rulemaking with the BEP.
That would be the
Begin?
that would be the December 22nd start of the meeting, the talks. I don't know why it says it's the deadline though for the 31st. That's only 7 days later. Or 9 days later. I don't know, Tony. We'll have to ask that question on December 2nd.
Okay, yeah, okay, good. Because summer of 24, anticipated adoption of routine/technical rules and provisional adoption of major substantive rules by the BEP. And we're still making rules into January of 2025. Spring of 2025, anticipated final adoption of major rules. Oh, fall 2025, issue the RFP for stewardship organization. I believe.
I think like Melissa said, is the focus here is we'll go into the meeting on the 2nd and we'll wear our hats as owner of a processing facility. This is what we feel the challenges are. This is where we feel we can help out. And then if we agree, some of the bullets here, the takeaways are, what does this look like for our members that possibly can't, sell a full load of recycling and nobody will come get it? So how does that work? But they're trying to recycle. Is pulp considered? Is briquettes considered? Can we really get down to the detail of what everything is? I mean, if we start making pellets, will that be considered if it's plastics? What else were the highlights? So is that kind of covered?
and stewardship. We're very interested in the stewardship process. How is that, what are your expectations there?
And does the gas come into this at all, Mike, as well?
I don't know, because it talked about food a little bit, and I don't know, like, I don't know enough about gas. That's where I'd have to ask George, like, do we know if we make this many pounds of gas, it took this much food waste, that type of thing. So I don't know. I think this thing's gonna grow as it moves on. I really think their focus right now is on the on cardboard. I'm very concerned, and nobody here is from those areas, but I'm very concerned about the waste, the waste flow communities, because that's the business I used to be in, and there's a big volume of cardboard leaving here that's not touching processors, and it's a big volume. And I'm afraid that this money is going to go into that till, and it's going to have no home to go for, so it's going to end up as the general sludge fund at the end.
Good point.
In summary, I now know more than I did an hour ago
Right.
about this and the process and things. Which
So-
which isn't, go ahead, Mike. Was that
I
you?
think we got some takeaways here, and
Yes,
I'm happy to help you out any way I can. Just give me a week or two to get through this other thing.
yeah, yeah. I'm away starting tomorrow through all of next week. I'll be back to work part-time for the town on the 22nd. Just FYI. I am working tomorrow. I just wasn't letting anybody know. I'll give Karen a call, depending if she's in at work tomorrow. I'll touch base with her. Go over what we talked about. Then Mike, okay, yes.
Super. Well, great. I think that
Anybody?
wraps it up, everybody, unless anybody has anything else.
No, I appreciate your knowledge base, Mike, and sharing it. It's
All right.
big help today.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. And if I don't talk to you, enjoy your weekend.
Yeah, motion to adjourn or unless whatever. Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.